Дорогие друзья, я рад приветствовать вас на моем
Dear
канале,
friends,
который
I am
администрация
glad to
YouTube
welcome you to my channel,
неправомерно отправила
which
в
the
недельный
YouTube
бан
administration
по
unlawfully
то,
sent
что
to a
я
weekly
якобы выдаю
ban.
себя за другое
In it
лицо.
I pretend
Я
to be another
описал эту
person.
позорную ситуацию
I
вопиющей
described this shameful
цензуры на моем
situation
втором
with blatant
канале,
censorship
ссылку на
on my
который
second
я оставлю
channel,
в
a
закрепленном
link to which I
комментарии.
will leave in the pinned
Сейчас вы меня
comments.
видите. Я
I
никого не
never
выдавал
impersonate
и не
and do
выдаю
not
себя за другое
impersonate another
лицо.
person.
Вся информация, которая будет представлена в этом видео,
All the
является моим
information that is
собственным
presented in this
анализом
video is our own analysis of the facts and evidence.
И информация, которую я предоставлю в этом
The
видео,
information I will provide in this video should awaken even a soundly
потому что мы
sleeping
получили не
person,
просто
because we
подтверждение
just
того,
received
что вирус был
confirmation that the
разработан в
virus was
лаборатории,
developed in a
а что к
laboratory at least a
тестированию
year
на этот
before its
вирус
operating
готовились
system.
как минимум за год до его официального выявления. На сайте Всемирного банка
Documents
были
were found on the
обнаружены
World Bank
документы, которые
website,
закрывают
which are
все
closed
вопросы
all
по поводу
questions about the
пандемии.
planned
В
pandemic.
документах
In
содержится
the prescription
предписание для
documents
всех
for
стран
all countries
относительно
regarding the
реакции на
response to COVID-19 and the
карантина до
2025 quarantine and
2025
other
года
things.
и других вещей.
In
Кроме
addition,
того,
the World
Всемирный
Bank,
банк через
through
свою
its
дочернюю
subsidiary,
компанию
documented the
документировал
export of
экспорт в разные
COVID-19
страны
tests to different
тестов на
countries back in
COVID-19 еще в
2018.
2018 году. Да, друзья,
Yes,
как минимум
at
за
least
год
a
до
year before the
выявления
documents were published on the
COVID-19.
internet on the World
Блогерами,
Bank
которые не
website.
боятся говорить правду, было отмечено, что после публикации ими этих документов в интернете на
In these
сайте
documents the
Всемирного
name the
банка в этих
COVID-19
документах
test kits was
название
changed to
тест-наборы
medical test kits.
COVID-19 было заменено на медицинские тест-наборы.
Mainstream media,
Подконтрольные культу
controlled by the
мейнстрим-медиа
cult,
молчат об
are
этом,
silent
что
about this,
неудивительно,
which
ведь
is not
такие
surprising,
вопиющие факты
because
просто
such
ломают
egregious
их
facts
фейковый
simply
нарратив.
break their fake
Всемирный
narrative.
банк будет
The
списывать
World
это
Bank
все
will
на
blame it
ошибку.
all on a
Однако
mistake,
это никакая
but
не
this is no
ошибка, это
mistake,
прямое
this is
доказательство
direct
того,
evidence that
что
all
все это
this was
было
planned and the
спланировано,
puppet
и
governments have their roles.
правительства выполняют
Now
свою роль.
regarding the
Теперь, что
laboratory
касается
origin of the
лабораторного
virus.
происхождения
Li
вируса.
Mengyang, a
Вирусолог Ли
virologist who
Меньянь,
worked for the
которая
World Health
работала и ведущая
Organization's leading
лаборатории
laboratory in Hong
Всемирной
Kong,
организации
said the virus
здравоохранения
was
в
created by the
Гонконге,
Chinese
заявила,
government
что
and
вирус
released
был
from the
создан по
laboratory on
заданию
purpose.
китайского правительства
This
и
brave
выпущен
doctor
из
had to flee to the
лаборатории
USA,
намеренно.
where
Этому
she is
смелому
currently in
доктору
a secret
пришлось бежать в
place.
США, где она
In
в
her
данный
Fox
момент
News post,
находится в
Li
засекреченном
Mengyang
месте.
said a
В
very
своем
important
выступлении
thing,
у Такера
namely
Карлсона
that the
на Fox
virus was
News Ли
modified in a
Меньянь
laboratory
сказала
in
очень
Wuhan,
важную
where
вещь,
the first
а
outbreak
именно,
of the
что
virus
вирус был
occurred.
модифицирован в
She said she
лаборатории в
had
городе
overwhelming
Ухане,
evidence of
где
the
и произошла
laboratory
первая
origin of the
вспышка этого
virus,
вируса.
one
Она
of which is
сказала,
the
что у
genome of
нее
the
есть
virus, by
неопровержимые
which,
доказательства
by analogy
лабораторного
with human
происхождения
fingerprints,
вируса,
it is
одно из
possible to
которых
trace
это
the
геном
characteristics
вируса,
of the
у которого,
manipulations
по
carried
аналогии с
out with the
отпечатками
virus,
пальцев человека,
and in
можно
conjunction with other
проследить
data to
характеристики
identify the
проводимых
place where
вирусом
these
манипуляций
manipulations were
и в
carried out,
совокупности с другими данными
and that all the
выявить
data
место,
point
где
to a
проводились
laboratory
эти
in Wuhan.
манипуляции. И что
Also,
все данные
let's not forget that
указывают на
Li Menyan is
лабораторию в
not the first
Ухане.
to claim
Кроме того,
laboratory
давайте не
origins for
будем
the
забывать,
virus.
что Ли Меньянь не
Talked about
первая, кто
this,
заявила
for
о
example,
лабораторном
a
происхождении
French
вируса.
virologist
Об
and
этом
Nobel
говорил,
laureate
например,
Luc
французский
Montagnier.
вирусолог,
Back
Нобелевский
in March of
лауреат
this
Люк
year, I
Монтанье. Вы
provided
еще
information that in
скажете
January
вы,
Charles
те,
Lieber,
кто смотрит
head
мои
of the
видео с
Department
самого
of
начала
Chemistry and
пандемии,
Chemical
помнят, что
Biology
еще
at
в
Harvard
марте этого
University,
года я
one of the
предоставил
most prestigious
информацию о том,
institutions
что
in
в
the
январе
world,
в США
was
был
arrested in
арестован
the United
Чарльз Либер,
States.
заведующий
He was
кафедрой
accused of
химии и
providing false
химической
information
биологии
to government
Гарвардского
agencies about his
университета,
participation
одного из
in the
самых
China
престижных заведений мира.
1000 talent
Его
program and
обвинили в
work at the
предоставлении
University of
ложных сведений
Technology in Wuhan.
неправительственным агентствам о
Two
его
Chinese
участии в
citizens were
китайской
also
программе
arrested
«Тысяча
along with him.
талантов» и о
All of
работе,
them were
где бы вы
charged with
думали,
3
в
separate cases
Уханьском
involving China.
технологическом университете
The
в городе
website of the
Ухане.
U.S.
Вместе
Department
с
of
ним были
Justice says that
арестованы
one
и
of
два
those
гражданина
arrested in this
Китая.
case is
Всех
therefore a
их
Chinese
обвинили в
citizen.
3 отдельных
On
случаях,
December
связанных с
9,
Китаем. На сайте Министерства
2019,
юстиции
he
США
attempted to take
говорится, что
21
один из
vials of
арестованных по
biological
этому
fluid
делу
from the
гражданин
United States to
Китая.
China.
9 декабря
I talked about this in
2019
detail
года
in my early
попытался
videos on the
вывести из
channel.
Соединенных Штатов
I will
в
not
Китай
repeat myself,
21
but
флакон
all
с
this indicates
биологической
that
жидкостью.
representatives of the
Я
cult in
подробно
the United
рассказывал об
States
этом
and
в
in
своих
China
ранних видео на
participated in the
канале, не
development
буду
of this
повторяться,
virus.
но все это
And now I
свидетельствует
want
о
to
том,
connect
что
all the dots for
представители
you.
культа в США и в
The
Китае
pandemic was
участвовали
preparing
в
long before
разработке
people
этого
knew about
вируса.
it.
А теперь я хочу
This
соединить для
operation
вас
was
все
prepared
точки,
by a cult
друзья.
that rules this planet
Пандемия
from behind the
готовилась
scenes.
задолго до того, как об
The
этом
original
узнали
goal of
люди.
this operation
Эту
is to
операцию
destroy,
готовил культ,
first of all,
который
the
управляет
elderly
этой планетой
population
из-за
of the
кулис.
Earth and to increase
Изначальная
control
цель
over
этой
everyone anyone else. Thanks to the work of pilgrims, workers of the light, the Alliance, and all concerned and courageous people, their original plan failed, and two factions of the action were formed within the cult. There are actually more of them, but in this context we are only interested in two. The first still wants to implement the scenario of mass extermination of the world's population. The second, in these conditions, abandoned these plans and wants to implement the strengthening of control over people. They want to do this by creating an atmosphere of fear, panic, and despair, by killing small and medium businesses, which will make people completely dependent on the centralized system. But in order to gain access to a centralized system, they will require a person to give them full control over his life, biometric data, a digital certificate showing the presence of a vaccine, and total obedience to the puppet government of the cult. Masks are the first step to this submission. After all, if a person is ready to put on a mask, even when he realizes that it is useless and harmful, then he already suppresses his free will in favor of negative forces. In a society where people without exception wear masks, it is much easier to realize negative scenarios because conditions have been created for this at a vibrational energy level. Simply put, if in a particular country a large part of the population wears masks, this means that they give the go-ahead for the continuation of the pandemic scenario. It is very important to understand. In the near future we will hear calls for mandatory wearing of masks more often. Comes to the point that in some countries, for example in Greece, cult experts urge people to wear masks even at home. You can read all the information about the dangers of masks on my Instagram, because as soon as I insert this information into a video, it is blocked. The cult is trying to unfold the second wave of the pandemic and arrange the economic collapse of small and medium-sized businesses, which are already suffering record losses around the world. Many could no longer survive this. We know that already in some cities the number of suicides due to the pandemic has already exceeded the real number of deaths from coronavirus. Self-isolation and the loss of business money is a trigger for people who will not be able to survive it. At the same time, large corporations and members of the cult enriched themselves during the pandemic. These are the same people who on their media platforms, through appearances in the media, forbid people to even think that all this was planned. And Bill Gates, the cult spokesman, explicitly states that America's problem is that Americans are very freedom-loving. That is, free people who refuse to become slaves prevented the cult from realizing their plans, and they openly declare this. And instead of talking about it, and not turning a blind eye to it as if nothing is happening, mainstream media is engaged in even more whipping up fear and panic. Masked people on the streets are exactly the vibrational energy background of suppressed will, despondency and fear that they need to realize their satanic plan. Look around. Politicians, doctors, journalists. They don't want to know anything about the real essence of what is happening. The lost believe each other as if they were beacons. In fact, they want to believe in the system that enslaved them, because their egos will never accept that they are deceived. But the hour will come when there will be nothing to believe in. The old system will inevitably fall. It is already crumbling before our eyes, and everyone will receive exactly the synchronization they deserve, because your intentions and actions today shape your future. If you bring freedom, love, and goodness in this difficult time, then you are already forming a bright future for yourself and other people. And I want to thank all the people who came out to rallies and marches against the pandemic around the world. And these are hundreds of thousands, according to some sources, more than 1 million people. I did not have the opportunity to do this earlier, since the minions of Satanists from the YouTube administration sent my channel to a weekly ban. In Germany, it was the largest rally in the country's recent history. At this rally, Robert Kennedy, the younger nephew of the cult-assassinated U.S. President John F. Kennedy, spoke. In England at the rally spoke. And around the world, caring people have come out against COVID psychosis and COVID restrictions. And we will continue to speak the truth and express our free will. It should also be noted that scientists who are not afraid to tell the truth conducted a study that confirmed that the death rate from coronavirus is 10 times less than previously stated. In addition, scientists from Oxford said that half of the positive tests for COVID-19 are wrong and quarantine is not necessary. but it was on the basis of these data that many countries were quarantined. And finally, many began to admit that the introduction of quarantine was a big mistake, that the consequences of quarantine are worse than the disease itself. Dear friends, many of you ask, but viruses do exist. Of course there. I talked with medical workers in different countries and they all say in private conversations that they have never seen this. The lungs of the sick are simply torn. This is due to hypoxia. But it's not easy oxygen deficiency. A doctor from New York said that the lungs of patients looked as if they suddenly found themselves on the top of Mount Everest without an oxygen mask and acclimatization. This virus is really a weapon that the cult uses against people. And this is what they do. I, like many others, received messages from Central Asia, in particular from Kazakhstan, that after the treatment of the streets with a chemical solution and the appearance in the sky of planes that spray this poison, the cases of bilateral pneumonia increased sharply. In addition, we see that sharp outbreaks of diseases occur in different countries at certain times, but at the same time, nothing similar is observed in neighboring countries. This suggests that the cult can indeed manipulate this virus with technology. What this is about, I think you guessed it perfectly. Thus, organizing an outbreak in a particular country or region, they are trying to put the whole world in a state of fear and panic by winding up the numbers. And we know a huge number of cases when COVID-19 was recorded as the cause of death of the deceased, although a person died from another disease. All this is done to introduce a global quarantine, which should lead to economic collapse and subdue the free will of people. The ultimate goal is to create a single world government. As for Trump, I urge you not to seek the hero and savior outside, but to find the hero and savior within yourself. While Trump is the only president of the world's leading countries to openly state that he has seen evidence of the laboratory origin of the virus, does anyone really think that the President of the United States will publicly declare this if he is not 100% sure of it? With regard to quarantine until 2025, friends, we have already avoided the worst-case scenario of a pandemic. Already now the cult has hoped to see the destroyed economy and the submissive herd, which will line up for any necessary integration of any tools into their bodies in order to gain entrance to the digital concentration camp. That did not happen. People woke up in the amount that was necessary to prevent this from happening. If everyone woke up, now we would see another world. However, the number of people that took to the streets of Germany, England, and other countries 2 weeks ago already indicates that we are on a positive timeline of the inevitable awakening of humanity. It is important to understand that fear and panic are the main weapons of the cult in their attempt to implement the second wave of the pandemic. They will scream from everywhere that the second wave will be even more dangerous and deadly. They will arrange provocations, spraying poisons in the air and winding up the death numbers from COVID-19. But it only depends on us along what timeline our civilization will go. In no way should we give in to fear. Love, good intentions, and deeds, strengthening immunity, meditation, sports, natural remedies, oregano oil, black cumin, colloidal silver, vitamin C and D, fearlessness to tell the truth is our main weapon against the darkness that the cult is trying to envelop the whole world. Thank you for your support. Stay on high vibrations. Don't let anyone or anything lead you into negativity. May the power of inspiration and enlightenment be with you.